Randy Robinson here at Life Today TV, and I have a guy that I consider a friend, Pastor Steve Vanzant, author of this book, The Significance of One. Steve, thanks for spending a little time with us on Life Today.
Thanks for having me, man.
What's going on with you?
Oh, man, same old, same old. We stay busy at the church, and we stay busy at the fire department. I'm the fire chaplain there, and it's just been busy.
Tell the story, if you don't mind, so that people understand. You're the pastor of Fort Worth, what's it called? Christian Center of Fort Worth in Haltom City, just outside of downtown Fort Worth. And that's a full-time gig as a pastor there. But then about 10 years ago now?
Yeah, it'll be 10 years in October.
Yeah, you became the chaplain
of the fire department.
For the fire department. How did you get that gig?
What happened was, right after 911, the police chaplain at the time sent out a letter to 32 pastors, and there's like 32 churches, I guess, in our area, asking for anybody who might be interested in being a fire department chaplain. And they had a meeting set up, so I told my secretary to call and confirm that I'd go to the meeting. Well, I was the only one that showed up at the meeting, so I guess I kind of won it by default.
Is that not, I mean, a little bit of a sad commentary on the church's support for the community? I mean, I'm not trying to indict them all.
No. You know, I don't know. I mean, that's part of it in my thinking, but then part of it is, well, maybe I was supposed to be there anyway. But it was just interesting the way that it just all happened, because, you know, everybody's busy. You know, and I think it has to be something in your heart. In fact, one of the questions they asked me after we had this initial meeting, you know, I met with some of the guys, you know, the leadership privately, and they asked me, they said, so do you think that this is your call? And, you know, everything in me wanted to pull the, well, yes, you know, God's called me to this and so the puppy. But I just looked at him and I said, no, I think the need's the call. And that's kind of what stirred the book.
What have you learned from going through some of the more difficult scenarios that you've been through? I know you've dealt with suicides, and you know you've dealt with just some horrible tragedies. I mean, what's some of the takeaway you get from these things?
The takeaway is just for really all of life. It's just my part of life is in intense situations of death. So people hurt. You know, and you talk about suicide, I mean, that's a whole different hurt, because most people have that woulda, shoulda, coulda thing happen. You know, what could I have done to prevent it and stuff? And you know, so you have that, and then you have, again, the other night right after that wreck, I had a little 2-month-old baby die. And dealing with the families, you know, and parents on that, and the guys on that, you know, it's different in the fire department when you work someone that's old, you know, that's lived their life, if you will. And then you know, a child. So I mean, I go through all different kinds of emotions, but it's all the same. People are hurting, and that's even, let's just throw the death side out, that's just in life. I've learned through what I do as a chaplain and as a pastor that people just hurt.
How much of what you do now and the ability to deal with that hurt do you think comes from your own tragic story?
Oh, huge. You're talking about my daughter's death.
I am.
Huge. Because I had only been the fire department chaplain a year when Leah died. I came on in October of 01, and then October of 02 is when she was killed. And you know, of course, obviously that's all in the book too. But it's just, that was a devastating experience for me. But I've come out of that a better man. In just one way is this: there is nothing I fear when it comes to a scene. You know, before, if I had a bad scene coming up, a child die or something, I've never experienced that. So there's not words to say. And then again, there's another chapter in the book that talks about the ministry of presence, which people don't need words sometimes. They just need somebody to just be there. And so, but once Leah died, and I worked through that whole hurt and pain, now I get it. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's no scene that fears me, because I understand. Well, and again, that hurt me, but you can't go above. I've reached the top in the pain thing. So when I go to a scene or whatever, I think that's part of what compassion is. I want my daughter back, obviously, but I love that out of that tragedy came something where I can have compassion in areas where I didn't really understand before. For instance, a 45-year-old guy had died, hanging up Christmas lights. So this was 2 months after Leah had died. Well, prior to that, I wouldn't have thought the mother would hurt that much. But because of that, I even thought she hurt more because my daughter was 18. Well, she had 45 whole years with her son. So before I wouldn't have related it that way. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So God is just good in spite of the tragedy. And, you know, I never went through that anger at him. I never went through it, you know, why did you do this? I actually, my first words out of my mouth was, I don't understand this. And when I say that, I always, with God, I'm always trying to prove him wrong, if you will, in the Bible or whatever. And I just told him, I just have to trust you. I don't want understanding. I don't get it. So I just have to trust you. And I did. It just, you know, and that's not this, you know, here's what's funny too. People are funny. Because there's so much strength, God gives, he gives supernatural strength, but then they'll come up, meaning well, and they'll say, well, you really aren't dealing with it, are you? Well, here's me. You know, come with me in my office when I'm laying down on my cot staring at the ceiling and getting up to drink a glass of water because I think my tears have run out so much, my eyes are stinging so bad, I think I got to refill my gas tank, if you will, so I can cry. It's just, there are moments when it's just proof that God is who he says he is.
So you're saying you have felt his presence walk you through these
absolutely
horrible, painful times.
Absolutely. In fact, again, I'm going back to the book a lot, but the whole story's in there. When I was having a horrific day, because what happens is you get this God fog, what I call the God fog, and I mean, I made pots of coffee and would go over right after I made it and pour it out and sit back down at my desk and realize what I did. I went up to the fire hall one day, and this was a few days after it happened, and there was a 4-digit code to get in, and it was the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they weren't in that order. I stood there for 15 minutes, could not figure out the code, finally got in my truck and left. But in that same fog.
Is that not just shock? I mean,
well,
you
yes.
call it God fog.
I call it God fog,
and
and here's why I call it God fog, though. Because you have to have that fog, otherwise your heart will break. And so it softens everything. It softens the hurt. Well, then after a couple of weeks, that fog's gone and reality hits. And you realize, because, you know, I was used to Leah being gone for a couple of weeks on vacation. Yeah. Well, a couple of weeks later, then you dawns on you, she's not coming back. And so you almost go through the whole process again. I was having one of those days when I wrote this chapter. I keep a little file folder of people who send me cards to encourage me. And the ones that hate me, I throw those away. But I keep the one, because sometimes you need encouragement. You know, the Bible talks about David encouraging himself. That's exactly what I do. So I pulled that puppy out one day because I'm dying. I mean, I don't want to live, man. And I wasn't suicidal. I don't know if that even makes sense.
No,
I had no reason to live. So I'm thumbing through trying to find, you know, I'm reading cards and trying to find some encouragement. Well, I pull this piece of white paper out, just spiral notebook paper, and it's written in pencil. Dear Dad, here's some encouraging words.
From Leah.
At the bottom, sign Leah. And of course, obviously I fell apart, but then I read them. And as I read them, I realized here I was looking for something for the day to make it through, and it put me right back into life. And that's the God I serve. She wrote that. He knew. He knew I'd file it. You know what I mean? It's pretty phenomenal.
So now, as you continue to help other people in their tough times, what is it, do you think, that God's communicating through you?
The pastor that pastors a church of 20 people is just as significant as the guy who pastors 1 million, or business, or what. Just pick wherever you're at, because the bottom line is you are a single person. And as you walk through life, whether that's, you know, I've used this illustration 1 million times with our congregation. I don't care how much you can quote me the Bible. Why did you yell at that waitress because your coffee was cold? You know, come on, this is life. And especially the way the world is right now. I mean, come on, our world is in crazy turmoil. They're looking for something real. The only real they're going to find is in our ability to love them, and to love them unconditioned, without condition. And what we do, though, we put conditions on it. Here's my greatest story that I hang on to. You remember the story where the guys brought the prostitute, you know, caught her in the very act. All right. So you know, the first question is, how come they caught her in the act? Why were they there? You know, but that's neither here nor there.
The Bible didn't tell us.
Yeah,
all
it doesn't
details,
give us
does
the
it?
nitty gritty.
No,
It
no.
didn't tell us what he wrote in the sand, you know.
No.
And we've run with the writing in the sand. Here's the point. At the end of it, when it was all said and done, see, because what happens is when you speak grace and say you should love people right where they are, immediately people say, oh, you're condoning sin. Well, let me make it clear, ladies and gentlemen, I don't condone sin, but I do condone grace and love. And here's the point. They bring her to Jesus. He says, those of you without sin, cast the first stone. And the Bible says what? They started leaving oldest to the youngest. The oldest because they had so many more that could come up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then he looks at her and says what? Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. What is he saying? He's saying, baby, I don't condemn you either, but quit wreaking havoc. 2 points in that for me. Number one, the church isn't that way now. That's what the church needs to be. The church says, go and sin no more, and then I won't condemn you. You get it?
Yeah.
The other point is, when Jesus spoke that to her, was her reaction to it. And then we don't get the story. We don't get the end result. I love that because sometimes I wish Job was written where we didn't get the end result because all we teach about is him getting double.
Yeah.
And we don't teach about the road that he went through to it. But my understanding of who Jesus is, who he was, and who he wants us to be. He wants us to love and to serve people. And look, we're called to be fishers of men, not hunters of heathen. Yeah. And so that means you got to use bait. Now, and there's another thing too. We want to cast the net. Well, I told this to a friend of mine one time. You know, cast your net. I'm the fishing pole. I want to fish the pole because I want to catch the smaller ones that slip through. I don't want to be a sports fisherman. You understand that? You catch the big one, you take the picture, you throw it back in the water, and no. Give me the bait that you catch and you go, oh, let's throw that back. That's the ones that I think are important and that I think are falling through as we do our thing of life.
Wow. Good message. Thank you for being with us. Be sure to check out Steve Vanzant's book, The Significance of One. You can get it at his website there on the screen, or you can get it at Amazon. They still carry it at Amazon. Are you up to number 28 now?
I have no idea.
No, I don't think so.
I don't ever read it.
Let's push it up there.
Okay, do it.
Check out his book, and thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for having me, man. Enjoyed it.